Let's talk some Cardinals baseball, where the last couple weeks, Cam, it's been all negative. And look, this was one win. Let's be real. The Diamondbacks are not great. They're 22-58. But the Cardinals needed to stop the bleeding, and they did so in a game that Adam Wainwright did not start, which is nice to see, because in the last 2-3 weeks, it seems like the Cardinals would only win an Adam Wainwright start. But you beat the Diamondbacks 7-1, and Wade LeBlanc, who was just acquired recently here, gets a shot in the starting rotation, goes 4 1/3 innings, allowed 1 run, so gave you a chance to win, which the Cardinals eventually did. You got production from a lot of different bullpen guys, which is nice to see. And we've been complaining, I have, about the offense and Jeff Albert and this or that. And I want to say again, we know the Diamondbacks, they're not the 27 Yankees. But still, you get a lot of production from the guys in your lineup that you're supposed to, the guys that are making the big contracts or the big names. Somebody like Dylan Carlson is obviously a top prospect, or now in the big leagues, but he has a couple hits, and Paul Goldschmidt as well, Arenado, Tyler O'Neill with a couple hits, Yachty coming through, Paul DeYoung coming through. You're seeing a lot of power there. DeYoung hits the homer. So it was nice for the Cardinals to stop the bleeding, now take care of business, and win the series, sweep the series. It'll be nice, Jim, to see, okay, Wade LeBlanc had a nice winnable start. All right? Didn't go 5, but he gave you a chance. And now you need to see, can Carlos do that? Can Carlos do that today? Can KK do that tomorrow?
As far as last night goes, hey, a win's a win, right? You got to start somewhere. So hooray. Thank you. We'll take it. It wasn't the prettiest thing, like you said. You're playing the terrible Diamondbacks. You played the Diamondbacks where they were basically giving you a win. If the base is loaded in the 4th, they go,
hey, that's strategy. Come on.
We don't have anybody else our pitcher's going to hit for. All that stuff, it doesn't matter. You won the game. Am I throwing a parade? No, but you're right. You got the win, and you move on, and you try and start building something forward today. Carlos, keep your fingers crossed. Which Carlos are you going to get? Are you going to get the good Carlos? Or are you going to get the Carlos that's running around out there and throwing his hands up in the air, can't throw strikes, and by the end of the first inning, you go, man, we were lucky he stayed in the game. You know, I don't know which one we're going to get tonight, but you had to start somewhere, and they got it done. Look, that's all it takes. It takes a little spark. They were so brutally awful against the Pirates. You didn't see any life. Well, maybe this is a little something to get some life. I know it's pulling, somebody's going, really? Come on. I get it. It was the Diamondbacks, but you got to start somewhere, man.
And whatever the Cardinals are going to accomplish this year, if they're able to sneak in the postseason, the way they're going to do that is beat up on these bad teams, which, by the way, they did a great job of that up until about a couple weeks ago, because the Cardinals were destroying teams like the Pirates and the Diamondbacks. At one point the record was something like 17-1 versus the really, really bad teams in baseball. And we get it. Nobody's saying the Cardinals are an elite team. Okay? Nobody's saying the Cardinals are going to win the division. But if you want to have a chance to make the postseason, you're going to have to continue to beat up on the Diamondbacks of the world. You have the D-backs. You still have the Rockies for the series after that. And then if you can just stay afloat and you can win a series here and there against Cubs, Brewers types teams, you will have a chance to make the postseason. I'm watching that game last night, and I also, just going back, I'm kind of looking up some different stats and all that. And to me, I'm thinking about, okay, you bring in Wade LeBlanc, which was a nice addition, but also, even if you'd have brought somebody like him in a month ago, how much of a difference would it have made? And that's where I think, if the Cardinals don't make the playoffs, if the Cardinals have an unsuccessful season, and maybe they fall 4 or 5 games out of the postseason, I think you can probably look to June and say they shouldn't have waited so long to make any type of move, even if it's Wade LeBlanc or if anything comes after this. And I bring this up because I was looking up yesterday, when the Cardinals really started cratering in terms of their starting rotation. So Miles Michaelis comes back for that game on the Saturday versus the Cubs. I remember it was on Fox 2, and he gets injured right away. That was May 22nd. So even if you're the Cardinals and you say, okay, this is clearly not ideal, Michaelis is down, let's see how long it's going to last. But I think you knew pretty early on there this was going to be months. But even then you say, okay, can we get through this? Well, 9 days later, Jack Flaherty goes down. Okay, that's the end of May 31st. At that point, you had a legitimate need. I don't know how anybody could look at losing Michaelis and Jack Flaherty and not say, you have to go out and get somebody, even if it's Wade LeBlanc, even if it's somebody like that, but do it right then. And the problem is the Cardinals have waited, and look at the month of June here. The month of June, so basically since the Jack Flaherty injury, the Cardinals are 8-17. So, I mean, you've lost a ton of games in the standings. I was going back to May 21st. So May 21st was before Miles Michaelis goes down, and also think about the Milwaukee Brewers, the team that is now in first place. On May 22nd, they added Willy Adames. They had a need at shortstop. They went out there, and they fulfilled that need. Since then, the Brewers are 25-10. Think about that, Jim. They're 25-10 since making a move for Adames, and the Cardinals are 8-17 since basically we knew that 40% of their starting rotation was going to be out for multiple months. And one more nugget on this. So go back to May 21st. The Cardinals were in the lead in the National League Central. They had a record of 25-19. They had a 2-game lead over the Cubs. They had a 4-game lead over the Brewers back on May 21st. Okay?
Yep.
The Brewers at the time were 21-23. Since then, and picking up Adames, the Brewers are 25-10. So the Cardinals went from a 2-game lead over the Cubs and a 4-game lead over the Brewers to now 8 back of Milwaukee. So we're talking about 6 weeks. The Brewers made up 12 games in the standings over the Cardinals. I know I threw a lot of numbers at you, but again, at the end of the season, if the Cardinals don't make the playoffs, you can probably look to June and say they waited too long.
That's awful. No, I said that a lot this week. Awful, right? That word. I mean, my goodness. But you're right. They stood by and watched the fire burn and did nothing about it. That's basically what has happened in the month of June for the Cardinals. And they're 3 games under 500. You got to get to 500 before you can do anything else. And to your point, you got to take care of the rest of the business against the Diamondbacks in Colorado, and you have to be above 500 or at 500 when this weekend ends with these 2 series, and then you go from there. But man alive, what the Brewers did when you put it in those kind of numbers just tells you being proactive pays off. That's what they did. I remember reading an article about getting Willy Adames for them, and they had some history with him in the past with, I believe, his brother or somebody close to him was in the Brewer organization, and they knew all about what kind of character Willy Adames had. And the minute they brought him into the clubhouse, regardless of how his position, how he played on the field, he was the right fit for them. He brought energy into that clubhouse, and that was something that they dearly needed. Not to mention a shortstop that could catch the ball, because Urias was terrible. In fact, it got so bad the manager said, "Yeah, he's struggling right now. We know we're just going to have to sit him down for a while and get a reset for him." I mean, that was their starting shortstop that he said that about. They go get Adames, and to your point, you threw out the numbers. They have taken off. They took care of the Cubs last night in a wild game that was close, and then they blew them away late. They are rolling, and they are rolling because their front office went out and did something about a shortcoming that they had in their lineup. Cardinals, they got LeBlanc in the lineup, but they needed to do more back then, and they still need to do more now to help this group get to whenever that is that Flaherty comes back. Is that August? I don't know. That's still a whole month away. They got to get after it.
Cam Janssen. Anybody on the text line?
Why didn't they do anything, though, Charlie? What do you think the reasoning behind that is? They know that they probably should have done, but why do you think they made that decision not to?
I think the timing of where moves are usually made at the trade deadline, teams don't usually make moves that early. Now, the Willy Adames trade that we're talking about, that was also, to use a hockey term, that was more of a hockey trade, whereas you're getting major leaguers for major leaguers. Yeah. You don't see that much. A lot of times you have prospects and whatnot, but the Brewers gave up 2 really good relievers. I mean, J.P. Fierson is really good, and Drew Rasmussen also was doing well for the Brewers when he was traded, and Firestone has been the closer at times for the Rays. I know they play the whole matchup thing, so everybody's a closer, but still, he's a high-leverage, legit reliever for the Rays. And Adonis, look at his numbers since he goes to Milwaukee. He's 286 average, 357 on base, 516 slug. He's got an OPS plus of 137. By the way, he wasn't hitting at all with the Rays.
No.
I know Milwaukee's a nice place to hit and all that, but Jim, to your point, it also speaks to sometimes when you make a move, just by making the move, you're sending the message to the clubhouse, we're investing in you, right? We went out, we saw our weakness, shortstop. We got you a big league talent, okay? So they make the move, which sends the message, hey, we're trying here. And then he comes and he exceeds expectations. So, Cam, long way of answering your question. I just think John Mozeliak probably looked at the schedule and said, hey, we're clearly banged up here. Our rotation is cratering. We have some arms. We have guys like Gant. Can they help us get through this month? And then he probably looked at the schedule in June, especially the back half, and said, okay, we're still more talented than the Tigers, the Pirates, the Diamondbacks, the Rockies. Unfortunately, for the first week or so of that schedule, the Cardinals have lost games to those teams. So I don't think John Mozeliak and the Cardinals brass thought it was going to be as bad as it is. But I don't want to say it's too late, but man, you're 8 games back in the division and 8.5 games back in the wild card here. So you have a lot of games to make up some of those games, but still, eight games is a lot.
It's a long way to go. And think of it this way, too. You go, well, we just got to start winning games. You do, but that also means the team you're chasing has to start losing. And right now, I don't necessarily think that the Brewers are going to maybe go in a tailspin because unless they have injuries, because right now they have pitching, and their starting pitching is really good. Starting pitching keeps you out of slumps.
And there's the difference right there. And with the Brewers, right now, you have 3 absolute monsters. We're talking about monster studs this season. Mm-hmm. I know Peralta doesn't have that track record, but Woodruff, who pitches today, Burns, and Peralta have been unbelievable ace-type pitchers. Where the Cardinals, they have one guy that's gone out there and pitched well, pretty well, and that's Adam Wainwright, who has really good numbers this year. He's been your savior. But after Adam Wainwright, there's a bunch of guys who, on any given day, you could make the case that they probably should go to the bullpen.
They've all underachieved.
And that's a fair point.
That's very fair. I think I know the answer. The answer is they don't have any other options, but the reality is, in any other situation, Carlos would be in the bullpen by now. I really believe that. He would, hey, you know what? You're not getting it done. We got to get... But they don't have any more options. I mean, last night, they end up sending down 2 kids. Woodford is going to get stretched out to be a starter, so when they need it, he'll be ready to come back up.
Isn't that now?
Yeah, exactly. You joke, but I think it was like 3 weeks ago we were talking about this on one of the shows, and it was like, well, what are we waiting for? Well, Woodford should be groomed to be a starter, and they wasted 3 weeks with that. But to the point I was going to make is yesterday they call up Roel Ramirez and a kid that they signed off, another guy off of Baltimore's scrap heap, Waddell, who was in the game last night. I mean, that's where it's at. You're just grasping for straws. You're healthy. Oh, come on over here. You're left-handed. You're breathing. Come on over here. Let's see if we can use you for a couple of games.
And this is my pet peeve, and I understand why they do it with Jake Woodford. When you have options, you can send him down. But I feel like this happens a lot, where you have a guy that you want to build up to be a starter. But I was looking up Jake Woodford's numbers this year, and his last outing, he threw 2 innings, and I believe it was 29 pitches. Don't quote me on that. I think it's 29. And then I looked back, and he had thrown 44 pitches in a major league outing at one point this year. And look, I get it that you want to have fresh arms, so you can't have a bunch of guys building up at the major league level. But you do have a lot of 4-5 inning starter types. So a piggyback situation is not crazy whatsoever when guys like LeBlanc, Carlos Martinez, KK, Gant, when he was in there, there's a lot of 4-5 inning starts. So my point is, somebody like Woodford, he just threw 2 innings. You're telling me his next outing, can't be 3 innings on a piggyback when you know you're going to get a 4 or 5 inning start. And I understand it's hard to plan for that, but I think sometimes teams overthink that.
I agree with that one. That's the one that was bugging me. I was like, okay, you need a starter. Woodford could fill that spot. I'm going back 2 weeks ago. He threw 2 innings. Next time out, we're going to give him the chance to start, knowing he's going to go 3. And then, 5 days later, he's going to go 4 to 5 innings. Guess what? Within 2 starts, he's up to speed on the guys you got that can't throw 3+ innings. That's the one that bugged me. I know Schultz said this in one of the post games about 2 weeks ago, or maybe a little over a week ago, because he was asked about Woodford. He goes, yeah, that's kind of hard to stretch him out. And I wanted to go, not with this staff. You don't have guys that can go 4 or 5 innings most days anyway. So what's the difference? Get him in there, get him going, and get him moving forward.
Yeah, I don't think that is, when I say that difficult, it's all relative. But if you were to have a situation where you say, okay, I want him to start a clean inning, a lot of teams do things like this. You can work an opener. They do this in spring training, which I understand is not the same, and those games don't count. But if you had a starter that goes 4 1/3, and you go, you know what, I want Jake Woodford to throw 3 innings in this game. You could bring in a reliever to finish an inning,
mm-hmm.
to start a clean inning for Jake Woodford to go in there his next time out and throw 3 innings. And you would think he could throw, 45 pitches, 50 pitches?
Yep.
And as you said, the next time out, you're probably close to 70. And I'm not trying to be negative, but so many of these Cardinal pitchers only throw 4 or 5 innings anyway. 70 pitches probably gets you to the point where you're dang close to what you're getting from these other starters.
They were exactly what they probably should have done as far as I was concerned with Woodford. 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, they could have started it yesterday if they wanted to. Because there are such things as we used to call them bullpen games, right? Well, there's a bullpen game for you. And Woodford, you're going to start. You're going to go 2 to 3 innings, and we'll just work our way down the line. Heck, San Diego Padres eliminated the St. Louis Cardinals in the playoffs last year with a bullpen game. So it's possible it can be done.
And also, the term bullpen game, I think sometimes you think, okay, the first guy, he might go 2.
Right.
And then you're going to have 7 relievers throw an inning or so. Yesterday was kind of a bullpen game when Wade LeBlanc goes 4 1/3. Honestly, I mean, you had
very similar
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different relievers clean that game up for the Cardinals. And by the way, give them credit to have 6 different guys go out there and perform well and not give up a run. That's a nice performance, even against a team like the Diamondbacks. But you have had a lot of games. Oviedo, too. I mean, a lot of these guys are throwing 4 or 5-ish innings. So to have that long man type to build up, whether it's Gant now in the bullpen or somebody like Woodford, okay, he'll be a starter, but somebody like that, I think we think about starters and relievers too much in the traditional old school roles, and that's not how a lot of teams look at it. They look at what they call bulk guys. The Rays have looked at that for years. Somebody like Ryan Yarbrough, who they brought in as a bulk pitcher coming off an opener. Now he's more of a starter traditionally, but for a couple years there, they would have a righty power reliever start the game, and they would matchup-wise bring in Yarbrough, and he might throw 5-6 innings or 4 2/3, but he's coming off the reliever, so technically he's not a starter, but he's a bulk guy. He's somebody who's going to give you length, give you innings.
Yep, that's the way the game is done now. Look, good for Wade LeBlanc. Next time, hopefully, he can get through 5. That was impressive last night. But this downside, I know I don't want to keep being negative here, but the one thing about as I'm watching the game last night, he gets into a little bit of trouble in the was it the 3rd or the 4th inning, and he's got runners at 1st and 3rd, and he got out of that. But immediately they got the bullpen going. I'm going, my goodness, a guy can't even afford to get runners on base anymore. And you go, well, we better get the bullpen going already. And that's because you only had 1 run on the board. And you knew, at least you didn't know, but you were thinking we might only score 2 to 3 more runs all night the way things are going. So if we got a guy that's got any traffic on base, we might have to get him out of there. And you can't manage games that way.
And you're basically, though, it's crazy to say a must-win versus the last-place Diamondbacks in June, but you're actually at that point. The Cardinals needed a win so bad. I understand aggressive managing. You had to stop the bleeding. You had to just get a win and turn this thing around.
No doubt. Look, they got the win. Hooray. It was frustrating at times, but, hey, a win's a win, and you move on. Right, Cam?
What's C-Mark going to do tonight, boys? People are asking about that.
Oh.
What are your predictions?
I think he's going to do well. I really do. I think.
What did you do last night? What did you do last night? Did he go out last night? Did anything happen last night? Okay, so is he
that I don't know.
That's the thing. People are asking about that. What do you think he's going to do, man?
I think he's going to pitch very, very well because he knows when you send Gant to the bullpen, and you could very easily have made the case that Carmart should have gone to the bullpen. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of a toss-up. I also think I'm going off on a tangent. When I've heard people say that, it's because Gant has a better track record as a reliever, Carlos Martinez also has a pretty good track record as a reliever over the years. I mean, he's been a closer at times. You could go way back. If you want to go way back to 2013 when he was lights out for that team in the postseason. I do think, though, Carlos wants to be a starter. And knowing that he really wants to be a starter, now Gant does too, but I think you're going to get a more focused Carlos Martinez as a starter. And when you have the fact that Gant was already sent to the pen, there's a clear message out there that, Carlos, you're walking a tightrope here. If you don't turn your performances around, you're also going to lose your spot in the starting rotation. So I think Carlos will answer the bell tonight.
I hope you're right. I'm on the other side of the fence. I can't trust this guy anymore. Last time he did pitch against Arizona, he pitched into the seventh inning, was really good. That was back in Arizona, was that about a month ago? It's one of the few starts he's had recently that's been very good, but he's too volatile for me to even count on.
Yeah.
We'll see, but hey, that's what it is.
Yeah, when you... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Cam.
No, I was going to say, Splashback chimes in and goes, going into June, the Brewers had no teams over 500 on their schedule. They just fed that month.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt, but that's what they're doing what the Cardinals aren't, right?
Exactly.
You know what? Those are bad teams. We're going to beat them up. They did. Cardinals, well, they're spinning in circles right now.
And that's the thing. Every win counts the same. So if you run it up against the bad teams, which, as we said, the Cardinals were great at that to start the season. The reason the Cardinals were above 500 and had the lead in the Central Division. I mean, if you go back, where are their series wins versus some of these good teams? You had the Brewers series that is probably, over a month now, where they took 2 of 3
mid-May
in Milwaukee. So, okay, and the Cardinals were a lot better and healthier early in the year. But you have to run it up against these bad teams to stay afloat. That's where it doesn't really matter. I mean, it is now an uphill battle for the Cardinals to make up 8 or 8.5 games in the wild card. I mean, that's the type of deficit that could take the rest of the season if the Cardinals are able to squeak in the playoffs. That's a lot of games.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through here. I'm trying to find the last time the Cardinals won a series. Yeah, the last time the Cardinals beat a team over 500 in a series was that mid-May series against Milwaukee. I mean, they were beaten up by San Diego, lost the series here against the Cubs, lost the series against the Sox, and that was all in May, and we know they haven't done anything useful in the month of June, so you're going back to May 11th or so since they beat an over the 500 team in a series.
And yesterday, all the moves that were made throughout the minor leagues, where you promote Jordan Walker, who everybody's super excited about Jordan Walker's future. Same with Nolan Gorman, now at AAA Memphis. But I think the issue is, we've talked about this a lot. John Mozeliak has spoken about this, where you have some elite prospects. You don't want to part with any of these guys, with Walker, with Gorman, with Liberatore. I think the difference in past years is the Cardinals, when they were really, really good, if you go from 11, 15, 16-ish, the Cardinals always had tremendous depth of talent, especially at AAA, where there were probably guys in those years that deserved to be on the big league roster, but they had so much depth, especially pitching-wise, that they were down in Memphis, and they were riding the train back and forth. They would come up and they would help the Cardinals, right? And then some of those guys you could trade away because they're big league-ready players. And that's where I think the Cardinals don't have that this year. They don't have guys you can trade away that are going to help another team in the big leagues, because guess what? The Cardinals would be using those guys right now themselves. And then you certainly don't want to get rid of any type of Gorman, Walker, Liberatore for a rental for this year's team. So they're stuck in a tough spot where you don't have those mid-level prospects that teams would probably be interested in, even though they're not blue chippers. You don't have those type of guys to deal to get a player that can help you at the major league level.
They are barren down below in the minor leagues. You can go through every level They're all well below 500. They don't have a lot of pitchers at all that can get guys out. We know about Liberatore. We think Zach Thompson could be one of those prospects. He's not very good this year down in Memphis. And below that, you're just kind of going, well, there isn't anybody knocking it out except for the guys they pulled up. Gorman, we know. Well, you're not going to give Gorman up for a rental. Jordan Walker's 19 years old, and he's already been moved up. He's not going anywhere for a rental. You're right about the lack of, chips for them to move around, but that's on them. That they created this. Maybe one of the guys they could have moved in a situation is the guy that's playing out in right field now, and that's Lars Nootbaar. He could have been one of those guys that you said, hey, we can give you this guy who's on the verge of making a major league roster, and we can get a decent return for it. But you can't give him up now. You don't have enough healthy outfielders. So, and he would have been 5 or 6 on the depth chart had everybody been healthy and on the list. So there isn't a lot there to deal with. But that's all on the Cardinals, man. They created this mess themselves.
Cam, anything else on the text line before we take a break?
Yeah, Kyle chimes in and goes, there's a couple of guys. Connor Thomas has made huge strides, and Andre Palante has as well. Thomas is at AAA, and Palante is AA. Jack Ralston has been good for Peoria. There's a few, but they're far between. And LeBlanc's next start will be at Coors, just saying. Joe Booth.
Oh, yeah. Good from Kyle. Kyle does great work covering the minor leagues. Kyle Reese.
Yes, he does.
I know that. He did bring up Palante. He's been making some strides, Thomas. But as he pointed out, that's it. I mean, you're not going, well, there's like 5 guys we can move. Nope, not that many.
And it's not a position of depth. And that gets back to the deals that were made in past years. And just off the top of my head, even if it's trading away guys that were the Joe Kellys of the world, you always had a ton of arms. You had a ton of guys who had success in the minors as starters, who had some success in the major leagues, maybe as starters or a reliever, but they were still looked upon by other teams as prospects and somebody you'd want in return. Mm-hmm. Whereas for this year's team, again, if you get back to arms, if the Cardinals had a lot of those guys, if there was any year that every single one of those dudes could be used, they would be relied upon right now.
Yeah.
In the Cardinals bullpen. And that's not the case. And that's all due respect, but the Jake Woodfords of the world, the Seth Elledges of the world, the Cody Whitleys of the world, this is the year where, man, you would have your opportunity to come up here and boom, you'd be in high leverage spots out of the bullpen, or you would have a start because they need it, because they're throwing starts to LeBlanc and Johan Oviedo. And there's guys who are basically making starts because they have nobody else. So if this was the year you had that depth of arms, those guys would be contributing right now.
Part of that, not making an excuse, because I know people aren't going to like to hear this, but all those names you just mentioned, Elledge, Whitley, Woodford, even Oviedo, those were guys they were counting on as their depth. And guess what?
That's fair.
They've failed. They are not. They've proven they're not good enough right now. Do they need to go back, fix some things, or are they just not ever going to be good enough? I don't know. But that was, what did I just rally off? 3 arms. Those are 3 arms they were counting on as depth. They've all failed. But it doesn't give them a pass. It just tells you the reality is that's what's happened. The arms they had in reserve have all failed. They got to find a way to go get more.
Right, and those guys all might be really good major leaguers, by the way. They just may be a year away.
Oviedo looks really promising with all the tools he has. He just can't throw strikes right now. He needs to be pitching at AAA and figuring out how to control his fastball and get it over for strikes. I mean, we hear that phrase, controlling the zone with your fastball. He can't do that right now. He shouldn't be doing it here, but because there are no more options that they have, they just keep throwing them out there, and the poor kid keeps getting lit up. I think 0 for 14 is what he is right now in terms of trying to get his first win. I mean, reality is he should be down at AAA figuring that out.
And while we're trying to be positive here, they did win yesterday, and one of those guys, though, that they need to rely on, who has been much better, is Ryan Helsley. Ryan Helsley had a really rough start to the season. In his last 7, 1.29 ERA in 7 innings. He has 7 strikeouts. So there's a guy, because you're loving what you're getting, obviously, from Gio, from Cabby, as they call him, Genesis Cabrera, and Alex Reyes. But those guys cannot pitch every night. You need somebody like Helsley to pitch more like he has the last 2 weeks, where he's been the guy that the Cardinals thought he was going to be, because that is the guy that they were relying on. He wasn't a depth piece. He wasn't a Whitley and Elledge type pitcher. He was a, hey, we're going to depend on you in high leverage situations. By the way, he was thrown out there as a potential closer with Jordan Hicks in the situation there. I mean, that's a guy who has big time stuff, and he has been much better lately.